Tamu Morning Show.
Oh! Young and old warriors!
The fort is breached and the wagons are burning.
Why doesn't the Prime Minister just say the truth and tell the Indigenous peoples that he doesn't give a about their rights?
Free Leonard Peltier. If you want to free Palestine.
It's a good day to be Indigenous.
KREZ 1680 AM.
Sangitamu Turtle Island, we are so back. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to the Native people across Turtle Island and across the world. Indigenous Peoples Day doesn't exist to celebrate ourselves or to perform our culture. Indigenous Peoples Day exists because we challenge settler colonialism. It exists because we are anti-imperialists, internationalists, and believers in decolonization. Indigenous Peoples Day is a protest against settler colonialism. Much love and solidarity to all in struggle across the world. Today we have curated a mixtape and we hope you enjoy it. It includes clips from various Indigenous Peoples Day events held by the Red Nation, including the proclamation by the city of Albuquerque for Albuquerque's first Indigenous Peoples Day 10 years ago. Thank you for supporting the show, Red Media, and please support our work by making a one-time donation on our GoFundMe or by sustaining our show on Patreon with an automatic monthly donation and access to exclusive benefits. Links to our GoFundMe and Patreon are in our bios. And we would also like to advertise a job position in Red Media. Red Media is hiring an executive director, and we have extended our deadline until the end of the month. Please help Red Media find an executive director by sharing in your networks and reposting any of our social media posts advertising the position. Please visit www.redmedia.press to find the job description. We also have links to the job description in our bios. Red Media is a 501c3 nonprofit producing and publishing work written by and for Indigenous peoples. We focus on creative collaboration, ensuring Indigenous intelligence and commentary, and in all of its forms. And Red Media produces content according to Indigenous intellectual traditions and not those imposed by us by settler culture. We believe in Indigenous abundance and aim to inspire caretaking and holding space for Indigenous writers and creators by publishing a worldwide range of podcasts, videos, and written works. Red Media is now ready to hire its first executive director. You will work closely with a highly academic volunteer board and a small but dedicated veteran staff, all of whom are committed to sustaining Red Media and executing its long-term vision and growth. Please join our team if you feel like this is the right fit for you, or please send our job description to someone you know or who might fit this. Please post this in a place where you think the right person might find it. It would really help out our organization. That's all I have for now, comrades. I hope you have an empowering Indigenous Peoples Day and that you enjoy the mixtape.
I want to open this evening's event with a few comments about the history of Indigenous Peoples Day. In June 1974, on the final day of the first International Indian Treaty Council meeting at the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, the mood was serious. A colossal task lay before the survivors of genocide. Counter-revolution was rearing its ugly head. American Indian movement leaders had been tied up in the courts after the armed takeover of Wounded Knee in 1973. The FBI's notorious COINTELPRO program had infiltrated the organization, nearly crushing the Indigenous movement in the United States. Yet something else was astir. The Lakota and Dakota elders who asked them to take a stand at Wounded Knee now asked their warriors, the men, women, and children of Red Power, to take their struggle to the United Nations. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Oglala AIM leader Russell Means took the microphone. He said, "What we are into is revolution, turning that cycle of life always back," he told the crowd. Taking the Indigenous movement to the UN and aligning it with struggles throughout the world saved AIM from collapse. Put another way, global solidarity prevented the end of a movement. The International Indian Treaty Council spent 4 decades working with peoples from all continents. The 2007 United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, a touchstone document, was the fruits of their efforts. That international solidarity was evident at the Standing Rock protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016 and 2017. It lives on in the spirit of Indigenous Peoples Day. In 1977, the Treaty Council, upon achieving NGO status, called for the end of the celebration of Columbus Day and declared instead the International Day of Solidarity and Mourning with Indigenous Peoples. The mourning is not to accept, Ramesh Chandra, the chair of the 1977 UN Committee on Racism, Racial Discrimination, Apartheid, and Colonialism that passed the resolution said, mourning is to fight. Indigenous peoples also got support from many organizations, such as the African National Congress and the Palestine Liberation Organization, which recognized that the devastating legacies of European colonialism and African slavery had to be addressed in the Americas. The same year that the subcommittee recognized Indigenous peoples as a category, it also recognized Zionism as a form of racism, which was later repealed in the 1990s. This solidarity wasn't a fleeting moment. In 1982, Spain and the Vatican proposed a 500-year commemoration of Columbus's voyage at the UN General Assembly. The entire African delegation, in solidarity with Indigenous peoples of the Americas, walked out of the meeting in protest of celebrating colonialism, the very system the UN was supposed to end. The commemoration was crushed, and the UN declared a celebration of the world's Indigenous Peoples Day and the Decade for the World's Indigenous Peoples, which began in 1994. The second decade was declared in 2005. And so our sacred duty today is to caretake this vital tradition. And this is something that we're trying to do tonight with this Indigenous Peoples Day event that the Red Nation has organized. We helped to pass Indigenous Peoples Day 9 years ago. So in October of 2015 in Albuquerque. Albuquerque was one of the first US cities to pass Indigenous Peoples Day. So this is something that we've been involved in for a very long time as an organization. We've seen Indigenous Peoples Day become a part of kind of settler state mechanics around the politics of recognition. And while it is important to celebrate Indigenous resilience, we must never forget, right, the anti-colonial and the anti-imperial spirit that is Indigenous Peoples Day. And so Red Nation has not held an Indigenous Peoples Day event, whether virtual or in person, in several years. And so we wanted to come back in 2024, especially in light of what is happening in Palestine, where decolonization and anti-colonial struggle undertaken by our Palestinian relatives has completely changed the world. And now that we understand moving forward, right, as Indigenous people, it really is decolonization or extinction.
Anyone can do it if you believe in what you're doing. And we accomplished a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done. So my last question for you is, what advice do you have for the youth, for the young people who might be watching today, who might want to follow in your footsteps in doing this kind of work?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I would say to the young people is that if you want to affect social change, it begins within yourself. You have to change yourself. Because of the situations here, and I'm speaking locally here in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and our situation where we've had to deal with Spanish aggression and repression since the beginning. They forced an idea to our people, to us, that we were inferior, that our way of life, our way of belief, our religion, our languages were inferior. And it's had a great effect on us. That's why I started doing what I was going to later on to become an activist. Although at that time I had no idea I was going to do it. That's why I started. I hated this idea of people saying you are inferior, your people are inferior. When we do this, when we do these kinds of actions, then it affects other ways that we deal with the people here. It's not merely opposing monuments It goes much deeper than that, much, much deeper than that. It's how we perceive ourselves. If we believe in ourselves, and it goes back to how we relate to our people. It can be with it doesn't matter, Apache people, Navajo people, people from your land, my land, it doesn't matter. We have to believe in those people. We have to believe in our people. We do what they do. Do what they do. Do what your people do. If they dance and participate in certain activities, then you do it. That's how people are going to look at you. That's how people are going to believe in you. You have to do it. If we do those things that are important to the people, and if we believe in what we're doing, then those changes start to occur almost as if like magic. And it really matters how we think of ourselves. So it starts with us. When I started on my road to sobriety, I learned to love myself. And what I took that, how I took that to mean was that it really started with myself. Once I started with myself, then I can deal with other issues that affect not only me but the people. It's really important. These issues are really important because they're going to affect how we deal with the outside world concerning the land rights, the water rights, our resources, as far as educational grants. It affects everything. How we think of ourselves and how we deal with those people who continually try to repress us. And I want to say to the people, because I've never found or have not yet found a way how to deal with this. One issue for me that really gets to me is this label of Pueblo. I hate the damn word Pueblo. When people say Pueblo, as far as reading literature, they think of us as meek, as subservient, and we have not been that way. We have resisted from the very beginning. When you see ceremonies that are closed off to the public, that's resistance. That means that the people are still doing things that were at one time banned, that we could not do them on punishment of death. So the courage had to be there to do it regardless. So the resistance has always been there. I think that there's a way somehow there has to be a collective decision between the so-called Pueblos here in New Mexico. And I say to the young people, if you can find a way, I think that will create a fundamental change on how we see ourselves and how we begin to deal with ourselves. I believe that the Spanish people love it when we call ourselves Pueblo. I hate that word. And so when I refer to my people, I always just, I use simply Acoma tribe, or I use the term Indigenous. And that's another thing too. We have to protect that, because there are other organizations out there who are beginning to say to the people at large that they are Indigenous. And that's dangerous, because it goes back to what I said earlier, that it matters because it concerns land rights, water rights, educational resources. When they can identify themselves as Indigenous, if we let them. We can't let them do that. And that's what it means to resist, and that's what it means to take action. And I believe that the young people should get that into their minds. There has to be a word that we can all agree, this is what we are. We're not Pueblo. This is who we are. We were not Pueblo before the Spanish came. We were our own people. The problem is we're so different. The languages are so different, but what connects us is the culture of what we have believed in before the Spanish came. And that takes us to another issue of religion. I know that I've gotten people upset about it, and we have to believe in something. When I got sober, that's what that was one of the principles that they stressed to me, is that you have to believe in something, a higher power, higher than myself. The problem is Christianity was forced on us. It was forced on us by penalty of death if we believed in our own religion. And when we believe what the oppressors want us to believe, when we pray to the God of the oppressors, then that's another problem that we create for ourselves. I believe that the people should go back to their own religion. I believe that the tribes should go back to calling their original places the way they were before we have them now on the maps, the Spanish names. And I know that I've upset a lot of people from what I've said. But I believe that it has to be said.
Well, thank you for saying it. And I think a lot of youth would certainly agree with you. And I think it'd be very validating and affirming to them to hear you say these things and to know that people have been taking action and resisting and saying these things, even when there's consequences. So thank you so much, Maurice. Thank you for paving the way for people like me and the Red Nation and all the people that are going to come after us, because your courage has really culminated into some really powerful victories, and those are your victories too. Yeah, well, thank you, and I would like to stress as well that there were people before me, and I remember my mother. She was a potter, beloved. She's gone now, but she was a potter, and I remember her saying that. There used to be a very good place to sell, and that was at the Spanish, at what they call the entrada now, the fiestas. Fiestas. And so she said it was a good place to sell pottery. And she said until one time there was a near riot there, and there was violence. And so she was really upset because she only saw it from a narrow point of view on how to make pottery, which is, how to sell pottery, which is important because it's our economic livelihood in many ways. But even then, things were happening. And I don't know who did it, if it was organized, if those things were organized, but there were certainly things going on before we became involved. We just took it a step farther. And once things quieted down, then other groups like yourself came about, and I would have to say that I'm very proud of you guys. I am extremely proud of all of you that have taken that step to take action. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel good that. As I get older, I know that it's going to continue, that our resistance and our belief in ourselves will continue. That's what makes me feel good.
800. The MHA Nation, and my paternal grandfather's clan is Water's Edge. I'm from Goat Springs, Arizona, on the Red Nation, the Nebuchadnezzar. Right now I'm standing on Tiwa territory. Let's hear it for Tiwa territory. Give the land back. The first. Not even kidding. We gathered today not to celebrate the awarding of an institutional holiday by the settler colonial nation state, but to show up as Indigenous peoples enraged and in resistance to the present-day colonial occupation of our territories. To afflict colonizer-in-chief Biden for acknowledging Indigenous Peoples Day is to make a mockery of the violences we have endured at the hands of the settler state, and specifically the systemic abuse of power that Biden has wielded against our communities through the extraction of water, minerals, and oil that we know to be our kin. The destruction of sacred sites and the ongoing state-sanctioned genocide against our black kin by killing cops, the suffocating silence enveloping the more than 350 concentration camps that exist across these stolen lands that violated and tortured and murdered our children. That's right! Some of you call them boarding schools. Right. And the astronomical and overrepresented numbers of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirit kin that are primary targets of this genocidal machine. Right. There is no accountability for presidents, politicians, extractive industries, and rapists. There is only revolt. When we avoid telling the rich history of Indigenous resistance and revolt to colonization, we make our stories more palatable for the comfort of white supremacy and white people in general. We don't want white saviors. We want accomplices who directly support our resistance by any means necessary. Our history is full of different sites of strategized means of war, several moments of victory, and successful revolts against colonization. It is by this resistance that our existence is made possible today. And it is with this resistance that we will arm our communities with every tool required for a successful dismantling of white supremacy, capitalism, and colonialism. I embody the same fierce resistance my grandfather had when he liberated himself and his 5-year-old cousin brother from boarding school at the age of 9 years old. He hopped trains, stole food from gardens, took clothing from clothing lines to get back home to his home village. I am more than my trauma. I am fierce resistance in flesh embodied. I am kinship. I am the water. I am the land. I am an extension of all things of this earth. Abolish means destroy, decolonization, or extinction. Read the Red Deal. Shout out to my Red Nation comrades. Shout out to all fierce revolutionaries throughout the world in solidarity with Palestine, in solidarity with indigenous relatives in Bolivia, Ecuador, Brazil. We are the front lines. Colonialism created climate change. It's good to see you, my relatives. It's good to be with you. What are we here for? I'm really happy and honored to be here, standing next to my relative, my Shadeja. As she spoke, I thought of everything that we wrote together, everything that we've done together as community, as relatives, as people who are here to stand in resistance against colonialism, capitalism, resource extraction, and to stand up for all the injustices that have been done to our people. These are our demands. Connect with local organizations that are indigenous to the lands you occupy and show them their needs and show up for their needs. Give the land back. This means you, rich white people. Give the land back. White millennials, stop buying the land. Stop gentrifying this place. We want water back. Stop using the water in ways that are unsustainable and without permission from indigenous people. Stop calling the police. Growing our community capacity means growing our ability to show up for one another in crisis. Stop and end police brutality against our relatives living on the streets. More housing and no jails. End resource extraction. Indian ruling. Stop killing our relatives. Reject colonial masculinity that kills our women, our girls, and our LGBTQI. Get ready and remind the politicians that we can end them. This is written by one of our youth. Indigenous people need to be liberated from all forms of oppression and injustice imposed upon them. Each and every one of us can and must be empowered as an act of reclaiming who we are and who we will always be. Salvation will not come from above. We must force an end to the theft and destruction of
Given its origins in anti-colonial international solidarity, how do we revive Indigenous Peoples Day in the spirit of its original intent?
Well, I think for us, it's a very tangible thing. It's not symbolic. We have to really disrupt and be activated. We have to, like I said, disrupt the flow of capital, disrupt the flow of arms. But another thing is our solidarity to share each other's stories, to go to each other's sites of violence, where all of our communities have really resisted and experienced violence on a regular basis. And for us, here it's come in many forms. Like we've done actions for Red Hill, we've done actions for Standing Rock, we've done actions for Palestine, we've done actions for the Philippines, for Okinawa. And that's something, that solidarity, that international solidarity is something that we need to cultivate continuously. Relationships, friendships, trust, learning each other's stories, really learning each other's stories, because we also have to recognize how our colonial education systems, our colonial media has really informed a lot of our knowing and understanding of each other. As colonized people, we really need to help our folks also recognize those intersections. We have to democratize a lot of information for our folks who are constantly fed tons of propaganda, tons of pro-military and pro-American propaganda. I will say, for everything, all the different organizing we've done here, I think years ago when we were organizing for Red Hill and I'm sorry, for Standing Rock, we were organizing for Standing Rock, and we raised a little money and we sent it for medical and legal support. But I'll never forget that our folks, in seeing our signs and our messaging, started to really see themselves in the struggle. So we would have something as simple as Indigenous rights, and it would be like people were waking up to something. And it's the same with Red Hill. It's the same with Makua Valley. It's the same with Mauna Kea. It's the same whenever our people see other Indigenous people's struggles, learn from other Indigenous people's struggles, it reinvigorates our own. And so I think solidarity, though, beyond symbolism, like, so what does that mean? And how do we figure that out? How do we get to, we need to listen to each other. We need to ask questions. We need time like this. And I really want to thank the Red Nation, really, for all the work that the Red Nation has done to not only change Indigenous Peoples Day in the United States. I mean, really in the last decade, it's been incredible. It's had this big impact, but constantly making these connections and building solidarity in these spaces, bringing the stories together in these spaces. This is such a critical part of that work that I'm talking about, because otherwise I'd never get to meet Muhammad, I'd never get to meet Vivi, and now, beyond the solidarity, beyond the petitions or actions that we're doing here, like, now we know each other, and now we are comrades, and now, we're in community with each other, and we can plan and activate together, and it's truly something that helps sustain the resistance, which can be a very painful thing to be involved in all the time, very exhausting. Our spiritual health, our physical health is constantly something that we have to try to protect and maintain in this kind of work. And this solidarity, this community building, this sharing of stories that's happening here is part of the good medicine for healing us and for strengthening us to keep the resistance going. So thank you so much. I'll pass it on there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was excellent. I mean, I don't really know if I have much to add, but I was really compelled by your kind of rejection of symbolic gestures. I remember when I first met with the Red Nation, we did the Red Nation podcast, and I said that I really hate land acknowledgements, and I still do, kind of like, not in an essentialist way, but I do hate the kind of perfunctory nature of land acknowledgements, the kind of like way that certain people can feel they can be absolved of the material ways in which they benefit from stolen land by simply acknowledging that they are on stolen land, or like remembering the name of the tribe, or so on and so forth. And the question then becomes like, how are you materially involved in, let's say, the liberation struggle of Indigenous people? How many Indigenous people do you know, and how many people do you talk to? And are you engaging these Indigenous people in your life as equals, or are you just like pandering to them and letting them pander to you? Do you have disagreements with them? Like, where do they stand in your psyche? Are they just a tool for you to kind of absolve yourself of certain guilts, or are they actually challenging you? I think one main thing that needs to be spoken about in the context of land acknowledgements is the need to center Indigenous voices. Now, I say this obviously, and I hesitate to say it because I understand how misapprehending identity politics can often end up in elite capture, and how some of many Palestinians I know are insufferable, and I don't want them to talk about my cause, and I can imagine this is the case for all other communities. But what I mean by centering Indigenous voices, actually centering the voices on the ground, the voices most materially impacted, by colonial erasure, by colonial theft, and so on and so forth. And lastly, like there's a lot to be said about like uplifting environmental efforts, about political education, intercommunal and across communities, about supporting decolonization efforts, particularly like in real time, not just theoretical, conceptual support, but actually supporting people taking, things into their own hands and doing what they need to do. And I think the last thing, which is I think one of my shortcomings, and I'll say this as a Palestinian, is that there needs to be kind of like, and this is why I hesitated to answer this question, because I didn't want to collapse both struggles, both the Palestinian struggle and the Indigenous struggle here, onto each other. But I do think there needs to be kind of cross-community conversation, not just like we show up at your events, you show up at our events, but I think we need to be in conversation with each other. Unfortunately, as a writer, I will say that, seldom do I open a book about Palestine and feel that it's talking to me. I feel like all of our books, we write them for the white gaze, for the colonial gaze. We're trying to persuade people who have spent decades and decades refusing, the evidence of their eyes and ears. We believe that we can somehow persuade them. And I think it is our responsibility, at least as writers and scholars and so on, to talk to each other. It's my responsibility to talk to other Palestinians, but also to other marginalized communities, and to be in conversation with each other. I know it sounds a bit romantic, even corny, but I do think there is so much we could learn from each other. There's so much love we can share with one another. And also there are grievances, I am sure, that our communities have with each other that can be ironed out and that can be learned from. I'll stop here. I don't want to ramble.
Yeah, I think I'm going to read a quote, and then from one of my favorite revolutionaries, because I think it's apt for this conversation. During the lifetime of great revolutionaries, the oppressing classes constantly hounded them, received their theories with the most savage malice, the most furious hatred, and the most unscrupulous campaigns of lies and slander. After their death, attempts are made to convert them into harmless icons, to canonize them, to say, and to hollow their names to a certain extent for the consolation of the oppressed classes, and with the object of duping the latter, while at the same time robbing the revolutionary theory of its substance, blunting its revolutionary edge, and vulgarizing it. And I read this because I think of how, one of exercise that I do sometimes with students and with people in community is we read old newspaper accounts of our Indigenous revolutionary heroes. So like the assassination of Sitting Bull, as it was recounted by the New York Times, for example. We read that leading up to his assassination, and then after his assassination, how did the New York Times depict one of our great spiritual and military leaders at that time, who fought the United States government, who had escaped capture, right? They had to kill him by sending another native person to go kill him. And they call him a savage. They call him somebody who couldn't relinquish power. He was, he was power hungry, he was power mad, and he was crazed. He was indoctrinated in this crazy religion that made him resist and sacrifice his own people. Fast forward 100 years, and the New York Times is depicting Palestinians, and resistance leaders that way. Just look at the depiction of somebody like Nasrallah, from Hezbollah. He's a bearded man. He's a terrorist. They're, constantly throwing this word around. Or if you look at how the New York Times depicted Evo Morales, the democratically elected president of Bolivia, he's considered power hungry. He's an indigenous man who is a sexist, right? And so these narratives, not only attempt to distort the image of resistance leaders and to profane them, there are also attempts to blunt their sort of like revolutionary edge. So that's why we can have a settler state that literally genocided the original peoples and the original nations of this land, and then can celebrate a day for indigenous peoples, or do, as Muhammad just said, a land acknowledgement, right? The perversity of it is pretty wild. So what I think, we really have to do is to understand why these, resistance leaders and why these people are depicted that way, and to understand that this, like a day like Indigenous Peoples Day, obviously the symbolism of it isn't going to radically transform what it means to be, a colonized person. But I want to read another quote, and this is a very simple quote. And this is from Bassel al-Araj, who was a Palestinian martyr. And he wrote something very simple. It says, "Liberate your mind before the land." And I remember hearing those words the first time I visited Palestine. I was actually in Ramallah, and some friends were talking about him. And I read, what existed in English translations of his Arabic writing. And that one always stuck out to me, because he's basically saying that, our minds are so colonized, and I hate that word almost kind of loses meaning sometimes, but we'll see a wall, and we'll see that wall as insurmountable, or we'll see something, a symbol of oppression, and see that thing as a permanent feature. As Muhammad just said, the mutilation of our land is something that is there. Things cannot be any different than what we know. And that's why he's saying, like, to liberate the land, you actually have to liberate your mind to see what is possible. Because, Tashunko Witko, Crazy Horse, nobody would know his name today if he hadn't done what he had done, if he didn't think the liberation of Lakota people was possible and gave his life, fighting for our liberation. Or somebody like, like Sitting Bull, for example, they gave their lives. They made the ultimate sacrifice. They were in the spirit, what they called at that time, the spirit of total resistance. And we have modern heroes who are that way. We have Leonard Peltier, right? The longest serving Indigenous political prisoner who, I don't want to get too much into his case, but we all know that Leonard Peltier was defending his nation and defending his people. He has every right to do so. And he's been convicted of something that he claims he didn't do, right? But the people he was convicted alongside were later released based on the basis of self-defense. But it's not about punishing just the individual. It's about collectively terrorizing and punishing the idea of indigenous resistance, right? It's colonizing our minds to say, hey, this is what happens to you when you take up a gun, when you take up a pen and to try to defend your homelands. You have every right to do so. They want to make it in your mind to, like, so you're literally self-gaslighting. Nobody has to gaslight you, because the first voice that prevents you from an act of freedom is your voice. It's not the colonizer's voice, it's your voice. And that's what I was thinking about when I was rereading Basil's words and thinking about how they've demonized any sort of form of resistance. And the last thing I'll say is that even with this demonization and criminalization and dehumanization of, whether it's Indigenous, Palestinian resistance leaders, something that also happens is that it's the media, it's Western society that's also choosing those people and those individuals as leaders. Not to say that they're not leaders, but it completely erases and flattens the very complex nature of Indigenous resistance movements. People will look and point to male leaders as the sole sort of like source of leading resistance, or the sole sort of inspiration for those resistance, completely erasing the roles of women, of youth, of non-gender conforming LGBTQ activists, or that resistance happens, as much about gathering food and surviving and creating community, and, reconnecting with the land as it does in these more overt sort of spectacular forms. So it also distorts our understanding of what, resistance means. And lastly, I'll just say that if we want to recuperate and to revive and to reclaim Indigenous Peoples Day and its radical origins, it's not to be sympathetic with each other's struggles or sympathetic towards people who are being victimized and dehumanized. It's actually to be inspired by those who resist and fight for freedom. That should be our starting point for solidarity, is the inspiration of resistance.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Naik. Thank you, Mohammed. It was amazing to hear each of you, because we need to remember that we belong together. We need to remember that our solidarity, whenever please, sean siempre capaces de sentir en lo más profundo.
We should always be capable of feeling any injustice committed against anyone in any part of the world.
Whatever is going on, whatever injustice, against whomever, wherever in the world. Dr. Ernesto Guevara, Che Guevara mentioned this. The first illness we have to heal is social injustice. So we need to remember that we are brothers and sisters struggling together. We need to remember that we are struggling for the life and dignity of our communities. That's why, on purpose, I have put my Palestinian flag here from Dr. Ayman Al-Taramsi. He lives here, is Palestinian in Bolivia. He gave us this flag because we are promoting solidarity against oppression, but actively, always, not only wearing the kufiya, but also promoting that we have suffered what you have suffered before. So, Mohammed, please, you need to know that we are all brothers and sisters. And here in Bolivia, your people is our people. Your children, your old people is our grandfathers, our children. Your tears are our tears, but also your strength. Our strength is yours. Please, you need to remember this. We will continue struggling like that because we remember, like Che Guevara said, internationalism and solidarity, because we are struggling all together against imperialism. As Nick brightly mentioned, the imperialism, anti-imperialism resistance in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, in some other places in the world, how imperialism is preventing Africa to join together. So when we are struggling together, we need to remember that our struggles have come not only this year, this time. I mean, we are being more aware now, but as you mentioned, here, Tupac Amaru, he was desmembrado, he was murdered, and the parts of his body were torn apart, and they put his head on the stick so no one could follow him, because those who are conquering, those who are taking the land and committing genocide, those colonialists, even now, today, they want us to think that resistance to colonialism, the right to defend our land, our people, our dignity, is terrorism, but it's not. It's our cultural resistance, is our struggle for life. So we need to remember that those greedy corporative bastards, They take the land, they take the water, they take the food, and they make everything profit of it, and they are all together with the war machine. So they don't want life, they just want us to become a merchandise. And as indigenous peoples, we are not that kind of merchandise they are looking for. That's why they just look at us like, as we were like in colonialism, little animals without soul. So we need to remember not only that we have a soul, but at Insumisa, a very rebellious soul, because they have murdered our people that have struggled together, but the strength of their fight is alive in us. But the strength of what the example they left for us is not going to be killed with bullets and murderings or cruelty. No, because we love them, because they have seed. They did not get murdered. They seeded. They were seeded on land so we can be reborn. And it is necessary to remember this. Otherwise, we think that we are alone and we feel defeated and we feel that there's so much, those are really bastards, powerful media with lies, every day lies. And we need to speak from our truth so we can find each other strength. So we can find in our truth, our strength again. Because for us, for example, as indigenous communities, we are recovering and our ancestral traditional medicine is alive. And it is alive not only because greedy doctors, they didn't want to go to communities because they were formed in racist universities, but we are alive because our ancestors, with their lives, they were prosecuted, saying they were witches. They were different prosecutions we have suffered because of our ancestral wisdom. And we need to remember, as indigenous people, we are alive now because of the hands of midwives, wise hands of healers, natural healers, wise hands of spiritual guides of our people. So we are alive because our ancestral wisdom is alive. And it's not something like capitalism take us like something, un adorno del sistema, something nice
The
and
decoration of the
colorful
system.
to be in this little space, because those colorful little Indians, the racism is so disgusting, but also they want to take us like our ceremonies for show or business, and it's not like that. Our ancestral ceremonies are ancient, strong cultural resistance. When we go to do our ceremonies, our prayers, our offerings, we are calling back the strength of the ones that loved us so much, that they want us in this world to be happy, in this world now to have dignity, to be proud of being indigenous, to remember that we come from brave women, brave men that have struggled for us. And that is the strength that we have. That's why we will celebrate this November 1st, November 2nd, beautiful, beautiful tables receiving the souls of our ancestors. Remember that the love that they had for us is the love we have for life. That's why what we love, we will defend with our lives. So one of the best ways to remember, to honor our indigenous roots is dismantle the colonialism, the oppressive systems in our daily practices, in academy, in institutions. I am working inside health ministry, which is so racist, colonial, patriarchal, but we need to be strong, remain strong, because we are opening like this, when you have a concrete, then a little seed because it's life, powerful life. This little seed come in this little hole, but it's so concrete, so hard, so awful. But then come rain, little wind come with some earth, and somehow this seed sprouts and grows and grows, and somehow it will be so huge that it will break this wall. So we need to remember we are those seeds. We are the most beautiful dream our ancestors dream of. Please remember this. Even with Palestinians, we have gotten tired of crying with you. Now it is time to be strong together, because as seeds of life, we have been taking care of rays of sunlight, of moonlight, healthy water, healthy food. So recovering our ancestral traditions, our ancestral parties, our ancestral food, our ancestral medicine is part of the resistance. It's not any folkloric issue for capitalism. It's our inner ancestral resistance to remember that we are so loved and we belong to this cosmic life, to this cosmic cycle. And when we will go back to Earth, new life will come and we will become those strong, loving ancestors for the next generation. Thank you so much, my dear.